at this time, what's happening right now is everything's breaking down into tribal affinity. President Trump says fake news. A lot of his people say, okay, well, if the president says it, the media are fake on a lot of topics, or at least they are biased on a lot of topics, so why wouldn't they be biased here as well? The media sort of need to bend over backwards to prove that they aren't biased, especially in cases like the Russia investigation.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Man, I just saw this clip floating around and I had to stop everything to react to it. You guys know I've been saying for years that the mainstream media, especially the hall monitor himself, Brian Stelter, is completely out of touch. But seeing Ben Shapiro walk into the lion's den, well, if you can call a CNN studio a lion's den, and absolutely dismantle Stelter's entire worldview in under 6 minutes, it's a work of art. Stelter tries to play this objective journalist card, acting like he's just worried about the truth. But Shapiro sees right through the mask. He calls out the exact reason why half the country has completely tuned out. Networks like CNN, if you're a political enthusiast who is tired of being lectured by people who think they're smarter than you, this is the video for you. Let's dive into the full interview and break down exactly how Ben exposed the media's boy who cried wolf problem.
In the past, the media should not go around pointing out how abnormal these circumstances are. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think that it sort of depends. Like, this stuff over this weekend was not particularly normal. So it's hard for me to argue the media shouldn't be saying that, the president is acting in non-normal fashion with regard to the Russia investigation. That said, I think that because the media have been saying not normal so often for so long, for over a year, for 2 years at this point, at a certain point it becomes the boy who cried wolf. Even when something is not normal, as it has been this weekend, I think there are a lot of folks who go, well, that's just the media spouting off. How are we supposed to trust them after 2 years of them saying that everything the man does isn't normal?
Isn't that partly because there's been a decade-long movement on the right to discredit the media well before President Trump came along?
Yeah, I would be surprised if it's just a decade. I mean, I think that on the
decades long.
On the right for as long as I've been alive, there's been a lot of questions about media objectivity, and I don't think that those questions are ill-founded. I think this is why, as I've been saying, it's really incumbent on the media to do as much reporting of the facts as possible and leave a lot of the hyperbole out of it. I know that's really difficult in a time when, the hyperbole seems to not only get ratings, but also to jog people's kind of amygdalas. But the fact is that the more the media underplays, I think the better they will do in terms of people trusting them. Because at this time, what's happening right now is everything's breaking down into tribal affinity. President Trump says fake news. A lot of his people say, okay, well, if the president says it, the media are fake on a lot of topics, or at least they are biased on a lot of topics, so why wouldn't they be biased here as well? The media sort of need to bend over backwards to prove that they aren't biased, especially in cases like the Russia investigation. Again, I think that what the president's done this weekend is not normal. I think that if the president were to fire Robert Mueller, it would precipitate some really devastating politics in the country, for sure, and it should. But I think that it's important that the media hold their fire up till the point where something really terrible has happened. I'm sorry, but the firing of Andy McCabe, for example, on Friday, that was recommended by the OPR. That's not something that is wildly out of bounds. What is out of bounds, obviously, is the president talking about firing Mueller, or if he would actually fire Mueller.
Where do you see the most egregious media bias right now?
Well, over the last 3 weeks, obviously, the coverage of the gun debate has been absolutely egregious. I mean, I don't want to single out your network, but CNN's been pretty bad on this from a conservative perspective. The idea that when there's a mass shooting, that the media feel the necessity to put on TV not only survivors, but specific survivors, that there's a certain subset of survivors who make it on TV a lot, and there are certain other survivors who don't, and that they decide to single out certain events and not other events in order to make a particular case, or they allow certain people to go on TV and suggest that folks like Dana Lash or people at the NRA are evil, don't care, they're terrorists, and there's no pushback from the anchors. This sort of thing makes a lot of people on the right feel that the media are really using this as an opportunity to push gun control rather than objectively covering the legislative efforts that are going on in Washington, D.C.
So your view is it should be 50-50, even if most of the students are urging gun control measures? You want it to be 50-50 or no?
I think 80-20 would be fine. I mean, I think that anything but 95-5 would probably be a good thing. And I think that it's also pretty obvious that, listen, everybody, this is my opinion about journalism, everybody in journalism has their own political views. We all vote, obviously, or at least most of us do. And it's not a pleasant thing when people in the media pretend their political views are not influencing their coverage, when it's so obvious that those political views clearly are influencing their coverage.
But is it political just to want fewer gun deaths? That's not political.
Well, obviously, it's not political to want fewer gun deaths. Nobody wants more gun deaths. I think that what is political is allowing certain people to go on TV and without any sort of follow-up question say things like their political enemies don't care about human lives. Like, I remember CNN got very upset when Dana Lash said at CPAC that people in the media didn't care enough.
CNN doesn't get upset. Certain anchors or reporters may challenge something. It's not a network-wide thing.
Well, okay, but reporters need to challenge. I mean, but again, the reporters are the representatives of the network. I mean, when I tune in and there's a reporter on CNN and the CNN insignia is in the bottom corner of the crawl, there's nothing I can do as an observer but say, okay, well, CNN may have a bias here, especially if that bias all runs in one direction. It's not like some of the members of CNN are pushing a particular agenda and some are pushing another agenda. There's always, if there is a bias, it is universally to one side, and that's what people on the right are seeing.
So you think the agenda that's being pushed is gun control by interviewing students who are scared to go back to school? Is that how you perceive it?
No, I mean, I think that the agenda being pushed is gun control if there, again, is no pushback on questions that would be asked to any other guest. I think that tragedy is obviously a terrible thing, but it doesn't necessarily confer expertise, and that's one of the big problems here.
You're very popular, Ben. Do you want to grab that?
Yeah, exactly. Goodness gracious.
It happens to all of us. I wanted
that.
to ask you, though, you know, your website, The Daily Wire, a lot of other conservative media sites that have criticism of the press. I sometimes worry y'all are trying to tear things down as opposed to make them better. It's one thing to critique and want journalism to be better, but sometimes I feel like you're just trying to get rid of journalism altogether.
I mean, questioning the motive, I don't think is a useful thing. If you can point out to me where the critique is wrong, I think that's one thing. If the suggestion is that the critique is invalid because the motive is invalid, that's another. So again, I think that if you don't like the motive, then ignore the motive and take the critique insofar as it's effective, right? We all have motives, but the fact is, listen, I don't want CNN to disappear. I don't want the New York Times to disappear. I don't want the Washington Post to disappear. I want them to do what they say they are supposed to be doing. I want them to perform objective journalism if that's what they say they're going to do, and opinion journalism if they want to say that they're opinion journalists. That's fine. My problem is when this is why my critique of, for example, the New York Times op-ed page is far less than my critique of the New York Times objective journalism. There's a difference between op-ed and journalism. It's why my critique of MSNBC sometimes is a lot less strident, I think, than my critique of CNN, because CNN purports to be objective. MSNBC really does not purport to be objective in the same way.
Part of me thinks that you and your colleagues at the Daily Wire should try to get jobs then at the New York Times. If you don't like the coverage, try to be a part of the solution as opposed to complaining about it.
I mean, I don't know. Would you hire me? I really doubt that. And not only that,
I wanted you as a guest for many months.
I'll be frank with you. I mean, I make a lot of money.
I wanted you as a guest for many months. I was wondering, you know, the Daily Wire has been growing. Your profile has been blowing up. There was talk about you maybe taking over Glenn Beck's The Blaze. Can you tell us if that's true and where you see your media company going in the future?
I mean, all I can say about that is we're always looking for opportunities to grow, and we are very much fans of what Glenn does. Any opportunity we have to work with Glenn, like a lot of other folks, we're happy to take.
All right, interesting tease. All right, Ben, great to see you.
All right. Wow. Did you guys see Stelter's face? He literally doesn't know what to do when someone doesn't just bow down to the journalistic integrity narrative. It's like he's never been confronted by basic logic in his life. Think about that boy who cried wolf analogy Ben used. It was a total mic drop. Stelter asks why the media shouldn't point out abnormal behavior, and Ben just levels him. He basically points out that when you've been screaming fire in a room where nothing was, burning for 2 years, nobody is going to believe you when a real spark actually happens. That is the most relatable point for anyone watching the news today. When CNN labels every single tweet or every minor policy change as an existential threat to democracy, they lose the right to be taken seriously when something actually matters. Stelter just sits there blinking because there is no comeback for that truth. And it didn't stop there. When they got into the gun control debate, Stelter really let his bias slip. He tried to justify the one-sided coverage by claiming most students want gun control. But since when did journalism become about following a popular trend? Ben nailed it. It's not about some arbitrary 50-50 split. It's about the fact that CNN purposefully ignores any survivor or student who doesn't fit the NRA's evil narrative. They use raw human tragedy to push a specific policy agenda. And then they have the nerve to act shocked when we call them biased. It's honestly gross, and seeing Ben call it out to his face was the reality check that network desperately needs. The absolute best part, though, was when Ben pulled back the curtain on the objectivity myth. This is what Stelter hates the most. He wants to pretend he's this neutral observer from space with no skin in the game. But we all know that's a lie. Ben is at least honest enough to say, I have a bias. And I tell you what it is, CNN has a massive bias, but they keep lying and saying they don't. That's exactly why people trust a guy like Shapiro more than a guy like Stelter. One is being real with you and the other is trying to manipulate you while pretending to be your high school principal. Watching Brian Stelter try to defend his objectivity while Ben Shapiro systematically deconstructed the last decade of CNN's failures was just so satisfying. It proves that these media elites have absolutely no defense when they're actually challenged on their logic, instead of just being allowed to monologue for an hour. What do you guys think? Did Shapiro go too hard, or did he say exactly what needed to be said? Drop a comment below. I know where I stand. Stelter got absolutely schooled. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're tired of the mainstream media nonsense. Catch you in the next one.